So today we have Agnieszka Nowinska with us. She's from Oak University Business School. She's an expert in AI application in maritime industry. Agnieszka, could you explain us a little bit more about your project?
Sure. Hi, I'm Aga. Thank you for having me. My project is titled AI Disruption in Chartering. Just to narrow it down, I hope I will become an expert in this very, very small part of maritime operations. And I run a project that is sponsored by the Danish Maritime Fund. A 2-year-long project divided in 2 phases. First one is an exploratory phase in which I try to unveil basically the patterns of adoption and extent of adoption of AI across segments and firms. And in the second one, I will be trying to pinpoint some more, some correlations of the AI use with firm performance.
Can you explain in detail how AI is being embedded in the chartering process in Denmark and which segments are most affected?
That's a very broad question. I think I will start by saying that it is only happening now. So if I have to reflect on patterns of adoption, it really depends on the segments, it really depends on firms. So I would say that there is definitely a lot of experimentation going on, but AI is mostly adopted very slowly for some functionalities. So there's many AI sort of based features that can help with different activities and for different cost reductions and improvements. So these are usually sort of being implemented very slowly. So we see like sort of spot adoption, we can call it vertical AI, so only one function that is adopted for one specific purpose, and only very few companies are adopting more of these, sort of streamlining it into an AI flow. To the second part of the question, I can tell that dry bulk, from the 2 segments I studied mostly, so dry bulk and tanker, is definitely leading and sort of paving the way to adoption. So I would say that's where, on aggregate, sort of percentage-wise, based on the exploratory study, the adoption is the highest.
Mm-hmm. In your review, how has AI influenced the relationship between ship owners, brokers, and traders in terms of frequency, speed, and volume of transactions?
Okay, that's also a very tricky question, right? So I think that in general there will be more push for sort of quality in these relations, more push for increased scope of service. So here I'm specifically thinking of the relations between operators and brokers. So we are really sort of moving from a simple matching exercise, so to say, between traders and the counterparties to more advisory. And that is very much based on AI, can be based on AI insights. That being said, speaking of the same relationship, I don't think there is a big fear for cutting the broker out. It's more about essentially enhancing the role. And I would say that that goes for perhaps all of activities at all of these different firm types, that in general we talk about the enhancement of human activity with AI, but the human role will stay. Mm-hmm. There might be slight adjustments. So for example, humans might be more taking on like overseeing role. So based on a forecast that AI is providing them, an operator or a broker will need to really delve deep in this data just to sort of double check before they click on the bottom submit. So that would be speaking in the sort of like the activities related to contracting and searching. But I think there is a wave coming also in the sort of post-fixture, so the actual contracting and post-contracting activities, where especially generative AI might play a larger role. But that still remains for the future to show.
What kind of searching and information costs have been reducing through AI, and are there any noticeable improvements in contracting efficiency?
So that's very difficult to pinpoint all kind of efficiencies. I mean, that will require in-depth, almost case-by-case firm-level data, right? So I can only talk about perceptions of what the firms say in terms of their perceptions of efficiency. So actually all types, I guess, of costs can be reduced. So I can start by talking about the matching costs. They are essentially reduced either through sort of higher quality of information available at the fingertips. So for the brokers, just to give you an illustration, instead of searching throughout a large amount of data sources, so they have information everywhere, starting from WhatsApp on their phone to different communicators on their computer, different Excel files or databases. So now they can have it more or less in one channel, in one place. So that's of course a gain of time, a gain of precision also, if that data is clean and well prepared. But then there's also, that's in the scenario of matching, where a broker is actually doing the match by himself. But there are also platforms that essentially bring these two counterparties in one space. So they allow for actually communicating internally, posting all the information in transparency. So the adoption rate of this is a different thing. They are not really taking the industry by the storm, but that's another example. And that, of course, can be extended to bargaining. So I hope that answers the question.
So how has AI changed monitoring, enforcement and adaptation costs, and have AI tools made this process more efficient or effective?
So I think that will be perhaps shorter answer, because I really actually focus up to the handover. So what you are up to might be more of the domain of operations already, depending on when the handover happens. But for sure, so they are fixture management systems and a lot of features that can help operators to manage and monitor. Of course, also like contract management features. So yes, this exists, but I think that's not really so much the focus of my study. But here, perhaps one interesting thing would be related to sustainability. But there's a lot of tools that now the firms have in hand to basically track also their sustainability performance, which I think bears a large promise for the industry and can help with the greening agenda.
So now about the challenges and concerns. Do you foresee any risks or challenges that come with the adaptation of AI in the chartering industry?
Yes, it's always risky to start on a new project, especially if it's long term, especially if it involves, large amount of investment. So we can see some experimentation where people scale back and they sort of restart anew with something else. So that's always a challenge. Especially coming from small firms, there is a fear of working with big suppliers that don't really account for their needs or might not be flexible enough and actually getting locked in. So that's another fear. Firms need to also balance their thinking of in-house versus outsourced solutions. I'm going to get back to that, but essentially by doing things in-house, they sort of enter a whole different competitive space where essentially they start being competitors with pure bred solution providers and software providers. That's another thing. But relatedly, those firms need to also consider their internal resources at their disposal, because probably only the biggest or the most savvy will be able to do so in-house. So one of the challenges is also actually availability of the trained and dedicated workforce at companies in order to sort of kickstart the process. I would surprisingly say that neither from the brokers nor from the other parties have I heard about the fear of human replacement, which is interesting because we sort of talked about it when first digitalization came into play. So I would say this is sort of more provocative thought or whatever, but yes, people are actually not concerned with that. They are more thinking in terms of potential, in terms of opportunities, and AI coming to enhance their skills as their role changes and evolves, sort of being accompanied with AI.
What would you recommend to shipping companies or software providers who are looking to integrate AI into their chartering process?
So I would definitely recommend that they stay tuned or that they consider these opportunities. So you're saying, okay, they are already considering. Yes, that's probably the right thing to do. I would say to always keep an open mind, because depending on what you sort of adopt and how you do it, the landscape might change. So you might also change your mind and do things differently. I see this happening, so sometimes experimentation leads you a little bit astray. You want to change something, so in order to do that you have to back. That's a big discussion on the adoption patterns, whether things can or are even sustainable to be built in-house versus outsourced. And as companies converge to sort of AI flows, basically firms can reflect on the extent of adoption, but also on the sort of characteristics of adoption. And the mix of in-house versus outsource is definitely something that they can consider. As more and more vertical AIs are sort of integrated into an AI flow, companies can specifically reflect on the balance between what they build in-house and what they build from other sources.
Can you provide any examples of how AI has improved chartering practices?
Yes, there are quite some, and I can focus perhaps on the activities leading to a contract, as the sort of CP management is now gaining a lot of traction. But let's consider search. So brokers who utilize several systems or functionalities to, for example, gather information about trends, gather information about delays in ports, fuel prices, etc., need to source them and very frequently double, triple check. With AI, of course, that process gets shortened, and also the quality of all these insights is getting higher. So in that way, the process is getting smoother, faster, and also based on sort of higher quality insights. That's only one. I mentioned that the search and matching can be also basically improved. Maybe not for the platforms, because their adoption rates are still fairly lagging or fairly low, but from all the insights and the support and decision making, the search can also be shortened. So the examples I provided, it's mostly based on functionalities that use machine learning and some kind of supervised learning, but we also see that experimentation and adoption is happening based on generative AI. So very frequently companies use one or other version of chat-like or co-pilot-like bots internally, and that's another example of how the processes can be simply made much smoother. And actually, even thinking of the training of new employees and knowledge depositories, these functionalities can improve.
So, Aga, in conclusion, what do you think is the most important takeaway from this project?
I think that, well, AI adoption is happening. That's the first for sure. I think the importance of the sort of first movers is there. So it's not equal by segments and perhaps also by company type. So in here, larger companies are perhaps paving the way. Also, dry bulk seems to be extremely active. But I would say that, of course, it's also a very complex process. While I think there will be a convergence from the sort of solo standing features to a more integrated AI flow, it's not going to be an even process for everyone. So we might expect setbacks, etc. And also what I personally find extremely interesting is that there is many opportunities, such as for business model innovation, as we have seen traditionally shipping firms going tech.
And lastly, how will the maritime industry be impacted by AI in the coming years?
It definitely will. I think in order to answer the question how, we will need to speak again after the second work package, because that's exactly when I will be studying there. I would say the extent of changes is likely to actually be significant. We'll see where it will go. Now we tend to move from the sort of low-hanging fruits of the search and matching costs that can be reduced with some of the AI features, more towards actually dealing with charter parties. That is a crazy and complex work with really generative AI that I think lies at the core. So we have to study more and also wait more and see how this is going to play out. But I'm happy to talk more about the actual impacts in the future.
Thank you so much, Aga, for your sharing on your experience.
Thank you for having me over. Yeah.